All right, guys. So previously we were looking at this question, and I think this question was to do with something along the lines that the captain committed something bad and that he should be kicked out for the team to have the best possible chance of winning a World Cup. I really hope, guys, that question was a good example of how these assumption questions work. But now, guys, without further ado, we're going to move on to the next question, question 16. So first of all, let's read this together. So it says, many banks encourage their customers to buy insurance against credit card fraud and other kinds of identity theft. But the banks are really protecting themselves. Customers who are victims of credit card fraud suffer inconvenience, but they are unlikely to lose money. The cost of any fraudulent transactions are met by the bank. It is therefore unnecessary for customers to spend money on additional insurance services. Sorry, guys. And then it says, which of the following is an underlying assumption of the above argument? So, guys, with using the skills we've used before, pause the video, give yourself just over a minute. Be sure to be back after that, and then we can go through the solution. All right, guys, so welcome back. So let's go through this. So remember, the aim of this game is that we need to identify the conclusion first and foremost, which is generally quite easy with assumption questions because that's not what it's trying to test. Therefore, it makes sense that the conclusion should be pretty obvious. But whilst you're reasoning at the back of your mind, you have to have some of the reasoning, some of the main reasoning they're giving to come to that conclusion, and you're basically finding the link, which is going to be the assumption. This is many banks encourage their customers to buy insurance against credit card fraud and other kinds of identity theft. So this is most likely just to be fact. So we can cross this all out. Okay. And this says, but the banks are really protecting themselves. So that's really his opinion, isn't it? So his or her opinion. So we can just put this down as their opinion. So I'm going to highlight that like that. And it says, customers who are victims of credit card fraud suffer inconvenience, but they are unlikely to lose money. The cost of any fraudulent transactions are met by the bank. Clearly, guys, that is fact. He's just stating what the current policies are. So we can just cross this all out and put it down as fact. And then lastly, it says, it is therefore unnecessary for customers to spend money on additional insurance services. So that is clearly going to be the conclusion, because remember, you have a nice conclusion indicator. So you give a bunch of reasons, therefore you should be thinking this, therefore you should be this. So this is going to be the conclusion. So the conclusion is saying that it's basically useless to get additional insurance services. And the main reason it's saying is because basically any fraudulent transactions that happens is going to be sorted out by your bank anyway. So what's the point of getting it? And we're trying to look at what links the two together. So A, customers whose identities have been stolen would have benefited um, from the bank's additional insurance service. So we can put this into a sentence. So it's unnecessary to get this additional insurance because the bank would basically cover you, assuming that customers whose identity have been stolen would have benefited from the bank's additional insurances. Hopefully, guys, you can appreciate that doesn't really make sense, right? And here is not really talking about the identities, more talking about fraudulent activities. Therefore, I don't like this. I'm going to cross this out. Additional insurance services are widely available for credit card customers. So that's not really what they're assuming here, isn't it? Because what they're assuming here is that there is basically, so if we put this in a sentence, it's unnecessary to get additional insurance because the bank basically provides that already, is going to cover you, assuming that additional services are widely available for credit card customers. Again, guys, that does not make sense. And really, that's really why I don't like this one. And C, the bank's additional insurance services protect only against the cost of fraudulent credit card transactions. So putting it in a sentence, it's unnecessary to spend money on additional insurance because the bank basically already covers you, assuming bank's additional insurance protect only against the cost of fraudulent credit card. I actually quite like that. The reason, guys, why I quite like that is because here you're essentially assuming that that additional insurance you get only covers you for that. You're assuming that there's no other benefit to that, but you don't know that there could be extra perks of having that additional insurance. So this is why I really like this one so far. So I'm going to highlight that, right? And then it says people who are worried about identity theft worry only about their credit cards. So that's quite random, isn't it, guys? That's why really we don't like this one. People who are worried about only worry about their credit. Yeah, that's pretty random. Doesn't really link in any way to the paragraph. And also, guys, so you see what I was doing there. So when an option is just completely random, no point trying to formulate it and see if it makes sense. But if it could potentially be right, try formulate it, see if it makes sense. And if it doesn't, that's not the correct answer. But hopefully that has made sense. And then lastly, credit card fraud is a less serious problem than many people believe. Again, pretty random, doesn't really link in any way to what's being said in the paragraph. Therefore, I'm going to cross this one out also. Therefore, guys, hopefully you can appreciate that. And in this situation, C would be our winner. So C would be the correct answer. So, guys, I really hope that has made sense. And as always, we look forward to seeing you in the next video. All right, guys, so welcome back. So previously, you're looking at question 16. This question really talking about why this additional insurance services wasn't of any use because the bank already more or less provides that. But hopefully, guys, that question has made sense and we're really getting better at these assumption questions. Now, guys, we're going to move on to the next set of questions, which is the IMAT 2016 lot of questions. And the question we're dealing with here is question 9. So let's read it together. So it says, few linguists would argue against the view that our first language is acquired and not learned. Preschool children do not study their native tongue, nor do they learn grammar rules, but by the time they start school at the age of 5 or 6, the vast majority are competent users of their language. Therefore, when learning a second or additional language, studying grammar is a waste of time, and all that is required is exposure to the target language in order to acquire competency in its use. So which of the following identifies the underlying assumption of the above argument? So guys, pause the video, just give yourself over a minute, be sure to be back after then, and then we can run through the solution. All right, welcome back, guys. So let's go through this. So it says, few linguists would argue against the view that our first language is acquired and not learned. So this, yeah, I guess he's basically trying to say this is more or less just fact. Even if you think it's like kind of his opinion, it will be really weak. So I'm just going to put that down as fact so we can cross this out. So it says, preschool children do not study their native tongue, nor do they learn grammar rules, but at the age of 5 or 6, the vast majority are competent users of their language. So that clearly is just fact, isn't it, guys? So all of this is fact. So you can cross this all out. It says, therefore, when learning a second language or additional language, studying grammar is a waste of time, and all that is required is exposure in order to acquire competency in its use. This is clearly the conclusion is, guys, really obvious because you have the conclusion indicated therefore. So that's going to be your conclusion. So basically, the conclusion is saying if you want to learn a new language, just expose yourself to the language. And some of the reason it's giving is because it is giving the example of children and how they naturally acquire their mother tongue, right? So what's going to link the two? So only people who know how to read can learn who can learn a second language. That is pretty much just random, isn't it, guys? So hopefully you can agree that's not going to be it. Languages are fundamentally different from one another. Again, just a statement plucked out of thin air. So it can't be that. Children are better at acquiring skills than adults. If anything, this would just no link whatsoever to the passage because if here's more trying to link how adults can learn in a similar way to children rather than saying one is better than the other. Again, this is just fully random. Learner of a second edition language should read the target language. It's actually saying the opposite, isn't it? It should say they should just be exposed. Again, just random. We can cross this out. Lastly, acquiring a second or additional language is the same process as acquiring the first one. So this is clearly going to be the assumption here, guys, isn't it? Because conclusion is that expose yourself to the language if you want to learn it, and then the reason is given is because this is basically how children learn how to use a language. But then obviously the link between them is that you're assuming that learning a new language is the same process as learning when you're learning the original language as a kid. So this is clearly, guys, going to be the assumption in this passage. So I really hope, guys, that question has made sense. And as always, we look forward to seeing you in the next video. All right, guys. So previously, you were looking at this question, which was talking about how if you wanted to learn a new language, you might as well just expose yourself to it. Because this is how kids learn. Hopefully, guys, this was. I really hope this was an exemplary example of what an assumption is. Because I thought in this case it was really clear what the assumption is, and hopefully you guys can agree with that. But now, guys, we're going to move on to the next set of questions from the IMAT 2015 paper. This was question 7. So let's read this together. Because studies are taking place to assess the benefits to dental health of adding fluoride to drinking water, a process known as mass medication. The health minister has urged consideration of fluoridation, particularly in deprived areas where dental care is poor. Fluoride can occur naturally in water because of fluoride-containing minerals. Fluoride, if in the water, improves dental health by up to 50%. Even so, fluoridation should not take place. A campaigner leader opposed to fluoridation has spoken of her experiences of living in a fluoridated area of the USA. She experiences fear of apathy and depression, material response to autistic tendencies, and had white flecks on his teeth. These symptoms disappeared when they returned home from the USA. So which of the following is an underlying assumption of the argument above? So guys, pause the video, give yourself just over a minute. Be sure to be back after that, and then we can go through the solution. Okay, but let's go through this. So studies. So remember when you see this word studies, research, anything along those lines, that's likely just to be facts. So studies are taking place to assess the benefits to dental health of adding fluoride to drinking water processes as mass medication. So we can just line this all out. So nice and easy, just line that all out. So the health is has urged consideration of fluoridation, particularly in deprived areas where dental care is poor. So clearly, this is just observation of what the health minister is thinking. So we can just also cross this out. Fluoride can occur naturally in the water because of fluoride-containing minerals. Again, he's likely not to be lying about that. This is just going to be fact. So we can just cross this. Whoops, that was a bit messy, but oh well. So hopefully you understand, guys. That's a fact. Now, fluoride, if in the water, improves dental health by up to 50%. Again, given statistics and likely not to be lying about that. Therefore, that's clearly going to be a fact. So this is just all fact. And then it says, even so, fluoridation should not take place. So this is quite a bold statement, and likely this is going to be the conclusion, but it's a very strong opinion, so therefore I'm going to highlight that. And it says, a campaign opposed has spoken of the experience of living in a fluoridated area of the USA, right? So, yeah, so this is just, he's just restating someone's experiences, um, and therefore this is just going to be observational, this is going to be fact. So you can cross this all out. Right, so you cross that all out. She experienced feelings of apathy and depression. Two-year-old son had autism and white flecks on his teeth. These symptoms disappear when they return. So this is clearly, guys, just all facts, experiences of someone else, and he's just recalling them. So this is just all fact. You can cross that all out. Right. So clearly, guys, the opinion here is that the author is opposing fluoridation of the water. Sorry, guys. So he's opposing fluoridation of the water, saying it shouldn't take place. And some of the reason he's using is because of this experience of what's happened in the past to this lady and her 2-year-old son. And it says, which of the following assumption, what's the following assumption? So mass medication is wrong. So fluoridation should not take place given what has just happened, assuming mass medication is wrong. That does not make sense, does it, guys? So it can't be this one. Fluoridation was a person's only source of fluoride. Again, fluoridation should not take place given this experience which has just occurred, um, uh, assuming fluoridation of water is the only person's only source of fluoride. Again, sounds out of place, doesn't sound right. So that can't be it. The next one, the reported health symptoms were caused by fluoride in the water. So again, fluoridation should not take place given the experiences of what just happened to this lady and her 2-year-old son, assuming the reported health symptoms were caused by the fluoride in the water. That sounds really good, isn't it? And this is also a very common assumption type of statement, because in passages normally, guys, they just correlate. So basically what they'll say is this happened at the same time that happened. So essentially we're assuming that caused that, but obviously there's so many other things which can potentially cause, for example, you never know. For example, she might have been going through depression because of just things in her life, etc. So this is actually very common. So whenever you see this sort of construct of a passage, you should be always thinking of this kind of assumption. So I really like this one. But let's just go through the rest. Fluoridation is cheaper than improving dental facilities. Again, fluoridation should not take place given this experience has happened, assuming fluoridation is cheaper than improving dental facilities. So that clearly sounds, it's just random, guys, really, isn't it? So this we can just cross out. And fluoridation is only necessary in deprived areas. Again, very random. And even if you formulate it into assessors, really, guys, there's no point wasting your time with these ones which sound fully out of place, that they're not really going to fit when you construct a sentence, including the assumption. So hopefully, guys, you can appreciate that's not going to be it. So hopefully, guys, this was, again, really useful question, because we saw whenever you have this sort of construct of a passage, the assumption is always going to be based on the fact that you're assuming one causes the other, when there's obviously a load of other things which are feeding in, which can cause the symptoms in this case. So hopefully, guys, you can appreciate that C is the winner here. C is the correct answer. But hopefully, guys, that has made sense. And as always, we look forward to seeing you in the next question.